Okay, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about this humble little organism that might just hold the key to a more sustainable future. The big question we're asking today is this: could algae really be the ultimate circular crop? To really get their potential, you have to appreciate just how fundamental these things are. They've been around forever. We're talking long before us, before there was even really oxygen on the planet, just quietly shaping the world into the one we know today. And this right here makes it personal. Just think about that for a second. More than half of the oxygen in every single breath you take, yeah, the one you just took, doesn't come from the Amazon rainforest. It comes from these tiny aquatic powerhouses. Kind of changes how you see them, right? So when we say algae, what are we actually talking about? Because, it's a huge category. It covers everything from the microscopic, single-celled organisms floating around that form the very base of the food chain, all the way up to the big stuff, macroalgae, which you probably just call seaweed. Think of those giant kelp forests. That's algae too. Okay, so they're ancient, they make our oxygen, they're literally everywhere. But here's the real question. Can this simple plant, the stuff we often just dismiss as pond scum, actually be a revolutionary resource to help us solve some of our biggest challenges? And that brings us to the core of this whole thing, this idea of algae as the ultimate circular crop, a way of closing the loop on what we do and completely rethinking what we even consider to be waste. This is really the magic trick right here. Algae have this unbelievable ability to consume what we throw away, things like nutrient-packed wastewater or excess CO2, and transform it into something incredibly valuable. Let's look at a real-world example so you can see how this works. Over in Scotland, there's a company called MyAlgae. They start with wastewater from a whiskey distillery. Now, this water is full of nutrients that algae absolutely love. They feed it to their microalgae, which then just multiply like crazy. And the final product? A super high-value fish feed, rich in omega-3s, that replaces the need to go out and catch small wild fish just to feed farmed salmon. It's a perfect loop. And get this, the numbers are absolutely wild. For every single ton of algae they produce this way, they save over 600,000 wild fish from being caught and prevent 40 tons of CO2 from ever hitting the atmosphere. I mean, that's the circular economy in action, plain and simple. And it's not just wastewater either. Down in Spain, a company called Algae-Energy is literally piping CO2-rich gas straight from a power plant to feed their algae. They then use that algae to create biofertilizers, cutting down our reliance on chemical ones. Again, it's the same pattern. One industry's pollution becomes another's raw material. So this knack for creating value out of what seems like thin air, or, waste, it leads us to our next big idea: the potential for a full-blown, algae-driven food revolution. Now let's put algae head-to-head with something we all know, like soybeans. Protein-wise, they're right there, sometimes even better. But here's where it gets really interesting. Look at land and water use. Algae don't need fertile farmland. You can grow them in ponds in the desert using salt water or even wastewater. Soybeans, on the other hand, need fresh water and compete for prime real estate. Oh, and bonus, algae are a great source of B12, which is a huge deal for plant-based diet. This chart just says it all. Because they grow so fast, the productivity is just off the charts. We're talking up to 40 times more protein and oil per acre than traditional land crops. Let that sink in for a minute. That means 1,000 acres of algae could replace 40,000 acres of conventional farmland. Imagine what we could do with all that freed up land. All right, we've hit waste, we've hit food. Now for the big one. The one that gets all the headlines, but is also the trickiest: green fuel. The promise here is just enormous. A single acre of algae could produce thousands of gallons of oil, which can be refined to jet fuel or diesel that you can just drop into our existing engines. That's why big names like Bill Gates and companies like Chevron got so excited. But, and it's a big but, there's the problem. The cost of actually doing it has been about 10 times too high to be competitive. It's technically really, really hard to do at scale. So hard, in fact, that even oil giants like Exxon walked away after pouring years of research into it. So, where does that leave us? We have these amazing applications, but also these massive roadblocks. The solution, it turns out, isn't to focus on just one thing. It's about connecting all the dots and seeing the power of the whole system. So if you remember one thing, make it this. Thinking of algae as just a biofuel source or just a food source completely misses the point. It's not a silver bullet for any single problem. Its true, game-changing power is only unlocked when you use it to connect multiple systems at once. And this is what that system looks like. See? You don't just grow algae for fuel. No, you grow algae to treat wastewater, while at the same time it's eating up waste CO2 from a nearby power plant. From that one single process, you then get a whole portfolio of products. Some of it becomes animal feed, some becomes biofertilizer, and the leftover oils, that becomes your biofuel.
When you integrate everything, the economics totally flip. You're getting paid to treat sewage, maybe getting paid to capture carbon, and then you're selling high-value feed and fertilizer. All of a sudden, that really expensive biofuel, it just becomes a cost-effective byproduct of a much more profitable and way more sustainable overall system.
Ultimately, algae offer us a blueprint, a model for a truly circular economy where there is no such thing as waste. We have the technology, we can see the potential. The only question left is whether we have the will and the vision to actually build it at scale.